East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, comedy on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, wherever you are in the world. As I head into the second decade of my program, the end is not in sight. As the great Napoleon Hill said, anything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Being behind the mic has been a yogic state for the Jake Feinberg Show. The topics on my program have expanded to the metaphysical, out-of-body experiences on the bandstand, relentless pursuit of unsung luminaries, spirit, wisdom, and altered states of consciousness. Not me pontificating, of course, but rather the artists themselves who don't shy away from the tough question. That's my job. Weave in and out of the dialogue, go deeper, ask follow-up questions. I'm looking for truth. It's hard to find, and I continue to be humbled by the accessibility of the musicians themselves. They're not uptight. They groove and they swing. They don't romanticize sometimes. And they write different chapters in their musical memoirs, some filled with bright lights or dimly lit lanterns. In a lot of monotheistic religions, people listen to a pastor or rabbi or imam who serve as a conduit to divine wisdom and pass that on to their parishioners. When you're on the bandstand, and everybody is on that frequency collectively, you're all a conduit to the divine. You get out of your own way and allow information to come through you. That's the salvation of music, when you realize you were only partially responsible for what you play or sing. My generation can perseverate over things that we love or that we're comfortable doing. The scary part is, oh boy, we got to get out and learn something new. We don't want to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. As a broadcaster, I could have submitted to the trends of politics, gossip, and controversy, but I decided to steer my show in a different direction. I wanted to interview artists about their contributions to our cultural heritage, more specifically how they define leadership, love, life, and lineage. And I get a chance today to speak to an individual who fits into all of that criteria. I've only been able to see her play live one time, but I can tell from her aura that she is somebody who is very much devoted to the metaphysical, very much devoted to channeling her purpose in life as a yogic meditator and as a musician, trying to inspire other people to be themselves. And I just am so very humbled and honored now to have her on the program. Noga Shefi, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake. Thanks for having me.
Can you talk a little bit about how you have? For me, only recently, I've started to feel a little bit of atrophying, or just having a very hard time staying lucid. Part of it is that I have not been able to heal through live music. And, I'm just a patron and a broadcaster and a journalist and somebody who covers this stuff, but I haven't been able to really let the body dance and heal. And I just wanted to know how it has been for you not to be able to play live on a relatively consistent basis.
Yeah, I've been okay. Of course, this is, I miss it a lot, and I can't wait to get back to it. But I find my ways of healing without being on stage or without witnessing others on stage. Yeah.
Can you talk a little? Because I'm just looking at, how can you do that authentically? And have you just sort of, devoted because you seem to, just from the outside, you oscillate between meditation, mindful meditation, yogic practice, and then also being a musician. I haven't really come across anybody who's thriving professionally in both of those areas. So have you leaned more on your meditation practices during this time, or how authentically are you able to heal yourself in this time?
Yeah, all good points and questions. I don't know if I've leaned more on meditation. I think I always lean on it.
Yeah.
Actually, especially when I'm on the road and doing lots of things in the world, it's actually the thing that helps me ground. I have been playing music mostly on my own once in a while with a friend or something, but just have a little more time to do some writing and contemplating for sure, more than usual when things are so slowed down and there's no opportunity to play live. I think you touched earlier on something that I think is really crucial, which is the experience of healing, and how a big part of it is being witnessed or seen, and realizing, like not just doing it all on your own, because I could sit at home and meditate, which I have lots of healing experiences just through my personal practice all alone in my room, but I've definitely noticed that aspect of me that just like, I just want to stand there and have everyone, see me.
That's right.
So definitely missing that. Yeah. Don't know if there's quite a replacement for that. And it's not just like, hey, everybody see me, there's
totally. No,
absolutely.
Absolutely. No, it's the ultimate collective consciousness being raised in the moment. I mean, that's the honest. I think that for me is the most authentic when I'm, seeing people, especially cats that I know and love. That is, in the moment. I'm able to stay in the moment at my best at those times, and that has been, and I just wonder how you've learned, and this is not just during the pandemic, but can you talk to the audience a little bit how you learned to stay in the moment? And what I mean by that is, for so long in our lives, in my life at least, you apply for college, or you get a gig doing baseball on the radio, or you whatever it is, like you immediately attach expectations to something, and then ultimately, once you do that, you're susceptible to being let down because you're attaching something that's in the future, as opposed to looking at something and saying, well, like, just why do I want to interview Noga Ma? What is my intention? The intention is because you are a sentient being and you are a conduit to the divine, and you can offer great information to people. And I know that this will be inspiring for so many people long after we left this earth. All of that is just my intention. No expectation. So I've learned to just drop expectations of everything. And that's not always a great thing. Some people say it's good to set goals or whatever, but can you just talk a little bit about how you've learned, how you've cultivated only doing things with an intention and no expectation?
I can't say that I'm in the moment at every given moment,
no
or that
way.
I don't have expectations. So I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
I guess, over time, because, like, for instance, you could have expectations about, I can't, just even coming out of the pandemic, some people might be projecting out and thinking, I cannot wait to get back out and have that cosmic connection on the bandstand with people. And they're setting up expectations for themselves that when they get back out there, it may be incredibly restrictive. It might be, music might be more, as it's been more recently, made for pacification. People have to sit in order for the musicians to be paid. There's going to be dinner involved. Anyway, it's going to be a lot more. It's not going to be what we used to know it as, where there are dozens of people just dancing and liberating, maybe down the road.
Yeah.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, and it's, it's the idea of saying, for me, it's always been, even on this journey, like I said, I'm starting my second decade, and it was always about the pursuit of the interview, or the who can I get now? Who's it going to be now? You know, because I was for a long time just going after all these luminary people in music, and then, you know, you start to develop expectations, and then maybe you get into, you know, an interview with Hugh Masekela, rest in peace, and it turns into a very contentious interview, or Ron Carter, because you're talking to them about cultural bias, or in any event, whatever you think is going into it, instead of just saying, oh wow, I'm doing this interview because, you know, I want to inspire other people, or I just want to stay in the moment. You know, it's merely about intention and no expectation. And I agree with you. I mean, I think subconsciously we just attach expectation to so many things. For me, it's been helpful to only approach things with intention. And I just wonder, you know, if that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think. Thanks for clarifying. I think I understand what you were asking.
It doesn't even matter if you understand. You can just riff any way you want. You know, these questions, there's no right or wrong answer to this stuff, you know?
Yeah. So let me clarify myself. When I was saying earlier that I'm really looking forward to going back and playing live whenever that happens, I don't have a specific expectation of how it's going to happen, because I personally have no idea if I'm even going to have a gig. You know, it's not like I have anything lined up. So I think at the very beginning of the pandemic, which was, you know, over a year now, myself and I know a lot of other people were still holding on to, like, oh, it's just like postponed a few months. Like, we're still gonna, like, oh, just that tour is canceled. And then in the summer, oh, it's just the summer. And then in the fall, and then it's like, whoa, it's like it's been over a year of like 0 gigs. So at some point you kind of have to really do some serious letting go, you know, and find those things that like nourish you and make you happy and give you meaning, like in the moment, in, you know, whatever situation you find yourself now, because we really don't know how this whole thing is going to unfold, how we're going to come out of this pandemic, how is live music going to look like. I just know that this is something that is probably always going to be a part of my life, and it gives me life. It gives meaning to my life, and I hope to keep doing it in some way, shape, or form.
Can you talk to your peers or even your elders about, you know, if there was a point when you did have to let go after, like you said, you were sort of hanging on quarterly, oh, okay, just missed this tour, okay, we'll miss the summer, and then once it gets into the fall, like how did you let go?
I'm still working on it.
Okay, you know what? We have a game on this program called Name That Voice, and I don't expect you to know who it is, but I thought of you when about this this audio clip. So take a listen to this, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Okay.
And I didn't want to. In the end, after doing yoga, which I continued for many years, the yoga of Master Vishnu Devananda, and I would go to the Sufis. The Sufis, for those who don't know, is the more mystical side of Islam, and very, very beautiful side of Islam. Unfortunately, we don't hear much about it. We only hear about the bad side of Islam, but there are bad people everywhere.
Right.
Nothing to
That's
do
right.
with religion.
That's right.
And I used to run into Paul Motion there, who's the drummer with Bill Evans.
Oh my God.
Who was also a follower of the Sufi way. The Sufi way is very much like yoga, one of the bhakti yoga ways. In any event, after seeing a lot of these masters, well, not a lot, but quite a few, I ended up wanting to be a disciple of Sri Chinmoy. This would be probably now in late 1970. And so I needed a discipline. I've always believed discipline is really the road to freedom. and I still am convinced of that today. It's certainly true in music, but I actually believe it's true in life too. And so I began quite a rigorous discipline of meditation and yogic practices. And at some point, probably about a year after I became a disciple of Sri Chinmoy, things were going very well. I'd already, Mahavishnu Orchestra was running. We were enjoying just phenomenal success. Not just musically, but commercially too. This was the biggest surprise of all. And one day, my Guruji, he said, so, Mahavishnu, the disciples need to eat a good meal and cheap. So why don't you open a restaurant? so that's what I did, and it was in Queens, and that's why I learned to cook Indian food. Not very well, but I got better as time.
I cannot wait to have. Wait, hold on for a second. Did you?
I still love to do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, it was. I had to make basically a good meal for $1.50, and even in 1972, that's a tough call. And basically, so I was just losing money every month, but it was what I considered part of my divine duties, for want of another word, and I was very happy that it helped people who didn't have much money to come and eat very cheap and good food, vegetarian. In any event, I kept it going for about 2 years, and but it got heavy for me in the sense that I really couldn't take care of it. I was touring all the time, and so I had to allocate responsibility to different people, and in the end, after a couple of years, I said to my guru, I said, Guruji, I'm really having a problem with this, And he said, well, it's okay. He said, you've learned enough, I think, from that experience. And so I gave it away, actually, the restaurant. I gave it to a couple of the girl disciples, ladies.
Noga, you want to take a guess at who that is?
No, you're going to have to tell me.
That was my 4th interview with John McLaughlin. And, he... it was so beautiful to be able to connect with him because, here it is. He comes to the United States. He's on, I think, In a Silent Way, like the next day. Tony Williams brought him to Miles. And so he's leading this cosmic existence, and yet he's searching for a way to get off of hard drugs. I don't think I think he was not sure exactly what he was doing, but the point is that he went to he connected with Sri Chinmoy, who had an ashram in Queens where John lived in the late 60s. And then, the story he was telling is that, Mahavishnu signs a contract. They've been shedding for a long time in the Lower West Side. And, they get a record contract and they're having commercial success. And they're going out on tour. And one day Sri Chinmoy said, Mahavishnu, the disciples need to eat. Can you please open a restaurant? And he did. He opened an Indian restaurant and learned how to cook food for $1.50 for all the disciples while he's being commercially successful musically. And eventually it got to be too much. And so he gave it away. But it was kind of like Sri saying to him, hey, okay, you're getting kind of in the stardom realm, not that it's going to your head, but let's see if you can, ground yourself enough and stay humble enough to know that you are just a regular cat like everybody else. And he gave him this assignment, and John did it with an open heart. And, I just wonder if you could talk about a little bit about, nobody's John McLaughlin and or Miles Davis, or I'm not trying to say that, but do you believe that you have sacrificed for the blessings that you have been given in your life? And I mean that by your ability to be present on the bandstand, not just have a good time, but play melodically, also be able to have a meditation practice, and most importantly, just being yourself. I mean, can you talk about, a time when you had to sacrifice to stay on your spiritual path?
It's hard to think about such things as sacrifice, because things that keep you on your path are ultimately for your highest good. So, I mean, everything could be a spiritual practice.
What has kept you on your? I mean, what did you ever have a point in your life when you faced a lot of adversity, and yet you were taking the insecure path, and maybe people were saying you're nuts, you're crazy. What are you doing? Why are you walking away from such security? The Western world, people want people to, they tell you there's a certain secure way, a certain path towards
Right.
success. You don't strike me like that. You strike me as a free spirit. And it's that insecure path is, it's amazing once you're in it. I mean, I've been in the wilderness for years. I'm just chopping my way out with a machete and enjoying the forbidden fruit along the way. But I mean, can you talk about, life is a series of forks in the road. I mean, can you talk about a time when you had to make a decision?
Yeah.
And you went with the spirit mind instead of the thinking mind?
I think I often went with the spirit mind, whether I knew it or not, because I never fully pursued such modern securities that you are talking about, which I can't say that was wise. If it was or it wasn't. But, yeah, I mean, there's been lots of forks on the road. There has been a point where I completely questioned if music is what I should be doing, because I was struggling so much. And I actually decided it's not what I should be doing, and then I changed my mind again. So I took a long break from music a few years back. But eventually found myself back in it. So,
can you talk a little bit about, did it naturally come back to you? I mean, did you realize? I mean, I'm saying, was it an unconscious thing where all of a sudden it was?
No, I mean, it was very conscious at the time when I decided I can't be doing this anymore. I was just hassling my ass off and really not getting paid, living in New York City and all that. So that was taking a toll on my health, physical health, mental health, and I was like, I don't think I could keep doing this. This is too much. And I think, and I did take a break, but then I cut out of all the bands I was with at the time, and stopped. Just said no to all gigs, rehearsals, tours, everything, and was just kind of leaving out some open space without really knowing what I'm going into or after. And that was weird, because then people ask you, oh, so what are you going to do?
Exactly. Yep.
And you don't have answers, and you realize that people just want to know what's your plan so that they feel comfortable.
Exactly. It's about their security, not about you feeding. So, and that's annoying. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
Yeah, but what brought me back to music eventually was seeing live music, and realizing and just having really like impactful moments at various shows, and realizing that if music affects me this way, it means that that's what I do for other people, and that I should keep doing it, just not in the way that I was doing it before, or maybe not with the groups I was with before, and, you know, find another way to go about it.
Ultimately, what was the biggest burn for you? I mean, were you, because the road can eat you alive. I mean, I have not been a road dog, but I mean, if you don't have, I don't know, a good routine built into your days, the road, I mean, because you're waiting all day to play at night. So fundamentally, when you look back on your music career, what changed when you decided to go back to music? Was it, and
well,
in order?
First of all, I started getting paid.
Well, so you're telling me before it was
a lot of DIY touring, a lot of just being part of bands, getting zero to very little pay.
That is ridiculous. Who are these people? Who are these leaders, man? I mean, I get it. I mean,
well,
yeah.
It's not like these bands were making money and not sharing it. It's just, you know, the nature of being a small act that's touring DIY. It's just kind of how it goes. And when you're just a young musician in your early 20s trying to just, you know, be out there, play music that you like, all that stuff you described in your intro, you know. So that's what I was doing.
Yeah, that's going to burn you out pretty. I mean, you're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
You got to be able to sing for your supper. I mean, so you then it was like when Noga comes back to the bandstand, it was the bottom line was that if you were going to take a gig, you had to get paid.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to mean I mean.
No, I dig.
I mean, that was the money wasn't the only thing, but yeah.
You know, I wanted to ask you a little bit about. I've only seen you play the electric bass. Did you ever play the upright bass?
A little bit. I studied it a little bit. Can't say I do it professionally. I don't own one at the moment, so I can't keep my chops up. But back home in Israel, and then for a short while I was at Berkeley, I took some lessons and rented an upright for a few months here and there to really study how to use the bow and kind of how to, you know, the positions and everything. And I love that instrument, but it's very phically challenging.
Well,
to play and to move around. So
well, no, because I'm curious,
really
how hip are you to the two cats I want to talk to you about are Scotty LaFaro and Steve Swallow. Swallow, you know, both of them. I mean, I'm obsessed with the Bill Evans Live at the Village Vanguard because even McLaughlin mentioned Paul Motion. With LaFaro, I mean, I could put that tape on Noga, and every time it sounds different. I don't it's crazy. It's like they never play the same song the same way once, and it sounds different every time. And I think it's because, it's because of Scotty LaFaro, because he was really the pioneer of not bass solos per se, but giving the voice of an individual voice to the bass itself. And you know, it says, I'm reading here off just a website. It says Noga has proven herself to be one of the tightest rhythm section players in Brooklyn, cementing each groove in a colorful concrete line of freedom. that was from the Delhi magazine. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how you've learned to express yourself on an instrument that is genuinely regarded. You'll hear people say, "Oh, they got to, lock the groove," or just lock in with the drummer. And actually, it's kind of like it's about dancing around everything, and it's about being part of that conversation. That's how new musical vocabulary is made. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about your evolution as a bass player from, being a timekeeper to being part of the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's lots of different aspects to, being able to be fluent on your instrument. And I guess when I'm thinking about it now, I think about two main things. One is like, if you get the technical things out of the way, then they're out of the way.
Right.
And then if you get the non-technical things out of the way, like, kind of ideas and concepts and beliefs and like certain shapes and stuff like that. If you get that out of the way, then you can express with more ease, So I think that I've been lucky to have a lot of really amazing teachers and training and education around music. And that certainly helped me to not have the bass be anything that's like it's not hard. Like bass is easy to me. It's like there's no like physical obstacles. You know what I mean? Between me expressing myself through that piece of wood. So I mean, not to say that I don't have anything to learn, obviously.
Of course, no, it's a forever journey. Yeah.
I'm not focusing on like, oh, how is my finger going to like, how is my hand shaped? Like, where am I? Yeah. Those technical things. So it's a combo of like having like enough proficiency and then I don't know, getting out of your own way.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm trying to get at is can you talk about like the ingredients that it takes in order for you to leave your physical body on the bandstand when the instrument is playing you, and you're not, like you said, you're not thinking about forming notes or shapes, and it's literally like I said in my interview, because you are a channel for information coming through you, and it's so beautiful because it doesn't always happen. But can you talk about an experience on the bandstand when you left your physical body?
I don't know if I would call it out of body experience.
It's just one of those things where it was you got off the bandstand. Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know that I'm that good at it, and definitely don't always get out of my own way.
Of course.
But I think that, just listening, right? You're just listening. You're not thinking, oh, what should I be playing? Oh, what are people thinking of what I'm playing? Or, right. You're not thinking about these things. You're just listening. And like if we were talking about yoga earlier, and yoga is union, and union is when you and something else like unite, become the same thing. And so it's kind of like in meditation, right? If you achieve really, really high concentration levels, it's like you focus on one thing until that thing in you, there's no you anymore, and there's just like you and the thing becomes one, whether you focus on whatever you're focusing on. So if you're deeply focused on the music, then you become part of it, right? So I mean, I'm not saying I do that every time, and I often think a lot while I play or get distracted or whatnot, but I think that's just focusing on the music itself and nothing else is kind of.
I mean, can you talk about a specific experience? We don't really love to deal in platitudes on my show. I mean, can you talk a little bit about an experience when you, because I mean, there's only two letters that separate magic and music. So I mean, and there is that whole sort of, you have to sort of adopt that Socratic method of, you have to know what you don't know, meaning. People get off the bandstand and people say, Noga, how did you do that? And you're like, I have no idea, where it just, and is there something that stands out, a time on the band? Because what you're talking about is, well, it's just what we've been riffing on the whole time is just becoming one, especially in a band context. And, it's not somebody out front wanking it, but everybody is conversing, and it's moving in like its own sort of, or it's a living organism, and yet, when it's done, you really can't take credit for it because you're not fully responsible for it because you were at it, And is there a time that you can point to?
I mean, there's been many times, and also like in one given show or one given song. You could be in and out of it. You could be thinking one moment, and the next moment you're just swallowed in. I don't know. I think there's been many.
Well, I mean, talk about one, especially when you were younger and maybe less experienced, and maybe more when you were really kind of, it was more in your head, and you were able to drop from your head to your heart into your, what I call the primordial gut.
When I was younger and I played in this band, this psychedelic pop band called Sula, and that actually kind of touches on what I mentioned before with the being rehearsed enough, or like having the technical stuff aside. So Zula, we played so much and we rehearsed so much that the songs were so engraved already and rehearsed that that really gives you freedom, because you're really, no part of you needs to think what's the next section or what should I be doing here? And also, like, the parts themselves were very repetitive, so you could really kind of just go on a ride with it. And we used to rehearse a lot, so we would rehearse for a while, and then after we felt like we finished working the songs for a particular gig, we'd go outside of the basement studio, get some dinner, get high, and then just jam, And I feel like in those moments we were already so rehearsed and familiar with each other that we could really just fly.
So let me be clear. The jamming part is when you could fly, right? Or because it seems
not necessarily.
Because let me ask you. I mean, how do you get off on the idea of, like, when you talk about? It was interesting. You just said freedom when you get the songs down, because you use the R word, which is rehearsal, which is I don't like that word because it can really, you can just wring all the soul out of tunes. But you said
Actually, I think I've definitely not supportive of one or the other. I think there's magic. There's the magic I just described of knowing the song so well that you have more freedom because of it. And then there's the complete opposite, which is super magical too, which is not knowing anything. Like someone just drops on you. Like I used to play a lot with a good friend Isaac Gillespie, who had a band, The Due Diligence, and his style was like no rehearsal for recording sessions, no rehearsal.
I
for
love
gigs.
it. I love it.
Like he just would show up, would like play us the chords, and would just go. And then that's a different kind of magic, but that's an amazing approach too.
Can you talk about, that's the kind of music that I love the most. What is magical? Because I think people are petrified about that, especially and I'm not saying that you are geared towards pop music. I mean, you're definitely an authentic, creative cat, but people are so afraid now to do something different, mainly because they just feel it's not going to get recognized in the pop realm. If you go back to Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, and Bruce Springsteen, those cats did not have a radio-friendly hit for their first 3 or 4 albums. They were given a lot of opportunities to get stuff out of their system, be creative, but there was a lot of artist cultivation. And now it's more like you get this sort of one-and-done chance, and that, I mean, can you just talk about that highly, I can't say that I'd be not, even as an accomplished musician, if you called me up and was like, listen, I'm recording in a couple hours, come over, we got 6 tunes, we're just going to burn through them and let's have a ball, I probably would be petrified because I would be afraid of making, flubbing a note or a clam or whatever. I mean, can you talk about the magic of purely improvised, on the spot, in the moment music with cats that have big ears?
I think that if people call you to play with them, there's a reason for it, and there is the things that you bring to the table, and there's, we all have strengths and weaknesses as musicians, and we just bring what we can bring.
Can you tell me, I mean, I've interviewed a ton of cats from the first year. I think Berkeley was the Schillinger House, 1969. It was basically a one-room schoolhouse, and cats would come off the road. Already established musicians would come off the road so the road wouldn't eat them alive. They could sober up or maybe learn a new instrument. But it was a trade school for already established musicians, and then on top of that, even in the early 70s, I mean, you could go to the Combat Zone and work the strip clubs all night, play in organ trios, 4 or 5 sets a night, or just, I mean, the opportunity, Harvey Mason or Mike Knock, Rick Laird, all these beautiful, Gene Perla, all these amazing cats. I mean, they had this incredible sort of conglomeration of practical application in the classroom, but at the same time, a ton of bandstand experience, gigs, and then ultimately connections to the next portal of their career. I mean, can you talk a little bit about what you have been able to take out of the most salient thing that you've taken out of academia that you've been able to apply to the bandstand?
I think it's an accumulative kind of a thing. So it's hard to point to one thing, but there's also this aspect of, okay, this might sound strange, but sometimes we need to get, like, I'm not saying this is my case necessarily in music, but sometimes we need to get the certification to have a kind of an approval that we could do this, if that makes sense.
Do what? What does that mean? I understand what
like play music professionally.
Just because I think that's what I'm getting at. So some people need to have a degree that they've mastered. They've took certain classes, but does that really mean that they can?
No, it does not. That's the funny thing, because lots of people went to get degrees in music and were never any good, or lots and lots of unbelievable artists
my God.
who never went to school. So it's not necessarily a thing, but I was just trying to think of what academia gives you.
Well, I want to go ahead.
People ask me, like, how was Berkeley and stuff, and it was great and everything, but I often say that the real school was New York City, living and playing music in New York City, and seeing people and meeting all these musicians and getting to actually do it was a much bigger school than, going to music school.
Absolutely. And that's what all the older cats who, when Berkeley was set up, originally, I mean, they had so many gigs. I mean, it was absurd. Did you actually have any kind of live music experiential experience at Berkeley, or was it all?
Yeah. Especially because I was doing a performance major, so I was kind of doing what I was already doing before, which, play in ensembles and jam and stuff like that.
I mean, can you talk a little bit about, did you play Scullers? Where did you play?
Oh, the school itself has, like, performance centers. And yeah, there's like, maybe like 3 venues around Boston.
Yeah, no, I went to Boston University. I know that town.
Yeah, I wasn't super active in bands back then, and I wasn't there for very long either. So
really, did you even graduate? Didn't you go?
I graduated. I went to school, to music school back home in Israel before Berkeley, and so I transferred a lot of credits. So at Berkeley, I finished a degree in only 4 semesters, so less than 2 years, and I was done. So it was actually really quick.
That's so beautiful. Can you talk to younger cats about, because obviously you've been steeped in the academy, but yet, you're searching quality, your need for individuality, and like you said, the school of hard knocks in New York. I mean, can you talk about how not to wind up walking out of academia sounding exactly like your professor? I mean, we have a homogenization of sound today. You go back to a certain period in our cultural history. I mean, I remember, for better or for worse, I used to look at it as a crowning achievement. I got to Bill Cosby before the world caved in on him. Did 2 epic interviews with him about his involvement in music, and I mean, I never watched the Cosby Show, but he was obsessed with. He wanted to be a jazz drummer. He would after he finished his gig at the Gaslight, he would go down to the Village Gate, and with Camille, was his girlfriend at the time, and Elvin would give her a big hug, and he'd be sweating. But the point is that you could put on any record, and you could hear, and you could tell immediately if it was Mickey Roker or Pete LaRocca or Tony Williams or Max Roach, and really everybody had their own individual sound. Today, it's much harder to find that sound. And part of it is also just because we're saturated in material, visual material on YouTube, and we're saturated in a lot of mediocre content. And I just wanted I'm not saying that you've figured everything out, but somebody who has had that much time in the academy and that you haven't turned into some sort of rote musician, classical musician, or the idea is that you just are, sounding like, how have you found your individual sound, and how would you, because, cats are going to school now paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to go get a degree, and there's no guarantee of anything on the other side. There's no guarantee of a gig. And, I want you to talk to people in your own way about how you've learned to, take what you need from the academy, but then obviously have a singular voice and cut through the morass.
I can't say that when I graduated I had my own voice. It was maybe like 10 years ago. I can't say that I had my own voice when I graduated, but I think it's important for people to just really stay tuned to what they're really passionate about, like what kind of music they're really into, like listen to a lot of stuff, and play a lot of stuff, play with lots of different people. The cool thing about Berkeley is that I think, at least at the time, like 50% of the students were international students. So you really get to play with people from everywhere, which I think is amazing. Yeah, so really just following the sounds that you're into and exploring them and how to make them yourself and yeah, I think a big factor. Okay, I got to give him credit. A good friend of mine who's a bass player from Israel, and we met in New York, and he told me this one thing one time. He was like, yeah, there's two kinds of musicians. There's the ones that play the notes, and then the ones that, I don't remember how he phrased it, but, you know, like at school, you learn all the right notes. You learn how to play scales and how to play in the form and how to play, you know, correctly.
That's right.
But they don't necessarily, I mean, depending on who is your teacher, right? Because you can have lots of different music teachers. But it's like they don't really like push you to explore sound necessarily, depending also what instrument you play. But anyway, that person was really like had a, you know, lifetime affair with sound, you know, love affair with sound, like, and he was, and I loved his sound, and so I would just like hang out with him and just see everything that he's practicing and applied myself. And, you know, he studied with this teacher who's the New Yorker organ and pianist, more in the jazz world, Samuel Hill. I don't know if you know him. Mm. And I also got to study with him for a short time. And I think the approach that they were taking into like how to practice and how to develop sound was really informative for me, and it allowed me to really explore different sounds. And just, it's not like I have one sound, but it's more like having that vocabulary and being able to pull different things at different times, you know, when it's time to go live.
Do you consider yourself drunk with sound? Charles Lloyd told me that in our interview. He's like, I am drunk with sound. You know, I mean, it's just that's what you do. I know that, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like, is it constantly, do you constantly have, are you just awash in sound? I think some people are. I definitely love music and I love grooving to music, but I don't have, you know, melodies popping into my head, or I don't know how to craft songs, but, you know, like someone like you, I feel like you are drunk with sound.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I spent a lot of time in silence.
I understand. No, and I can feel that. I think that's really, that's a whole other, but you know, but in the silence, Noga, in the silence, that's what it's about, right? I mean, that's where music is too. That's what Miles talked about. The silence is the music.
Yeah.
I have another voice to play for you, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
I sure did. They changed my life. They honestly changed my life. Hearing Chick play. In fact, one of the things that made me think that playing jazz on the banjo would be possible was hearing Chick play the tune Spain with Return to Forever on a record at jazz appreciation class. I had just started playing the banjo. And it's the way he played, you know, especially it was that Rhodes piano sound, electric piano sound, and it was sort of crunchy, and he was on the front end of the beat like a banjo would be. But the language was completely different than anything I had learned on the banjo at that point. And so after hearing that sort of blew my mind musically, and then I got to go hear him play. And it was a formative moment for me, because when I watched him and his whole band playing all this crazy music, it just occurred to me that every note they were playing was on my banjo too, and I had to go find those notes. So for me, it's as trippy as you can imagine that I get to go out and play with Chick Corea. And we just finished a tour last week, and we have this next duet tour starting next week. So,
he gave some clues there. You want to take a guess at who that is?
Someone who played with Chick.
Someone who played the banjo. Yeah, that was Bela Fleck.
Oh, shit.
And it was an interview I did with him about 4 years ago. He was going on tour in these duets with the late, great Chick Corea. And, I'm going to read this back to you. He said, because he was watching them, he was in high school seeing Return to Forever live. He said, when I watched him and his band play all that crazy music, it occurred to me that every note they were playing was on my banjo too, and I had to go find those notes. Can you relate to that as it relates to maybe a time when you saw a certain kind of music, and you recognized that it seemed crazy, but you recognized that all the notes were there and you just had to go find them?
Yeah. I don't know that was the exact experience I had, but I do remember, like, when I was young, when I was a teenager, I used to go a lot. I used to go watch a lot of live music, go to festivals and all that kind of stuff. And I watched this Israeli kind of a world jazz group that fronted by the trumpet player Avishai Cohen. And his playing is really, really unique, at least to me. And I remember watching it, and I remember, like, hearing kind of responses from other friends or people that were there, or in general, when you watch something really impressive and it makes you think, oh, I can never do this. And I felt like there could be, like, two opposite reactions. One is, like, complete defeat of, like, oh, I can never do this. And the other one is, like, I better hurry up because I want to play with people like that.
Right,
so,
that's right.
I feel like that was kind of my experience of, like, I better get to it.
I mean, why do you choose? This may be, like, very obvious to you, but why do you live in the United States and not Israel?
Because it's just less limited.
Less limited. I love that. I guess what I'm trying to, like, Harvey Brooks. Do you know Harvey Brooks?
No.
Well, I mean, he was the bass player in Electric Flag, and he played he was the bass player at Forest Hills, Queens when Dylan played there. A massive studio musician in New York, great electric bass player back in the day, and he lived in Tucson for for quite a while actually, and then he moved to Israel. And when I interviewed him, he talked about, now again, I mean, he's been there, done that. I mean, the amount of studio sessions he was on is ridiculous at a time when there was a real studio scene. But he just said the music scene within the major cities of Israel is quite inspiring. But I just wonder, is it, what is in a normal time, what is more expansive about here, the opportunities here, as opposed to what might be going on in Israel?
Yeah, it's true. There's a lot of really, really incredible musicians in Israel, and lots of beautiful music coming out of there. It's literally more expensive in terms of, it's just bigger. it's just bigger over here. So
it's like very big. Yeah.
There's just, like, much more of everything, in terms of, like, niches and scenes and styles and opportunities and all that kind of stuff. You know, in Israel, you don't really go on tour. Like, Israel is in the size of New Jersey. It's like, you know.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of you wants to make it in the big time.
It's not about that. No, it's more just like there's only so much you could do, or there's only so many people you can collaborate with. So there's this kind of like, you know, a 1,000-fold more.
There's that many more rabbit holes to go down. Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, that is cool. I mean, you, you live in Brooklyn now?
I'm on a bit of a retreat away from the city right now, but I guess I'm technically still.
I mean, are you still in the Mountain West? I mean, you were just here, I mean, or are you back on the East Coast?
I'm kind of still moving around a little bit.
You're like a Bedouin. No, I mean, it's very cool.
I'm like a Bedouin.
Yeah, but you know, tell me where you want to grow, where you know you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone the most in any phase of your life. Like, you know, the only way that we continue to grow is by pushing ourselves, not being unrealistic. I mean, it's about recognizing your strengths and weaknesses. There's no doubt about it. But then there's also the ability of, when you have to go into the unknown, when you have to push yourself and in order to grow. And where in your constitution do you need to grow the most?
Oof. Are we talking about music?
It can be anything. It can be anything. I mean, music is not, I mean, that's the one thing that's truly humbling for me, is that every industry, as you know, airlines, sports, I mean, everything has sort of come back in some retrofitted form except for live touring music. And so it's kind of, I mean, yeah, but when you are in deep contemplation, in the silence, what do you, or maybe the better question is, what do you want to work on that you know you want to grow in?
I want to grow in so many ways, but I'll keep it to music right now. I think something I've been putting on the back burner for most of my life is like kind of like my own songs and stuff. So I'm trying to do a little more of that. I released an EP a few months ago, and I'm now getting to the mixing phases of another EP that I'm made. So, just kind of like putting my own songs out there, which for some reason it's been terrifying.
Why do you think it's been? Just because you're afraid of reception? I mean, what is terrifying about it?
Yeah, that I think that playing bass feels less. What's the word I'm looking for?
Less vulnerable?
Definitely less vulnerable. Like, I don't know what the word I was looking for, but yeah, I think it's I feel like my songs are exposing way more than my bass lines. So that is, yeah, a vulnerable.
And how has it been received? Have you been pleasantly surprised? I mean, how is that now that you've, maybe those songs articulate really what is inside of you? I mean, how has it been nearly as, was the anticipatory anxiety nearly as bad as what is reality has come to be?
I don't know. It's kind of an ongoing thing. I mean, it's not like I feel the anxiety like viscerally. It's just obviously there if I stop myself from putting stuff out so many times,
Noga, there's a lot of people in many different positions, some better off than others, but I just think it's important as we move into a completely unknown time. Like you said, we have no idea. I'm already seeing concerts that sort of, that are coming up that it seems to me like it's, at least in the short run, music is going to become more of a, I don't want to say boutique kind of thing, but the idea of playing, Baby's All Right or Skinny Dennis with sticky floors and, people dancing, flowing, and talking. I mean, it seems to me like they're putting together, dinner concerts and things like that in order to raise more money so that the musicians can be paid. And, again, it's all in the short term. But I just feel like, for a lot of creatives, it can be, there have been dark times and there will continue to be darker times. And I kind of wanted you to talk about how much you love yourself and how you've learned to love yourself. You find this funny? It's important. Self-love is where it all begins. You can't.
It's important. Yeah.
And you give off a lot of love to the world, so you love yourself.
Yeah. So what are you asking?
How have you learned to love yourself? Because a lot of people, they don't. And their world gets very dark because and I guess that's the other thing. They give and give and give and give, and then they leave nothing in reserve for themselves when things get dark. And I can't think of any better example than, a good friend, a good friend of mine. I didn't know him that well, but the late great Neil Casal. He gave everything to meet the bandstand. He gave so much love and inspired so many people, and so many people owe their entire careers to him, and he never saved anything for himself. And when things got a little bit too tight, he checked out. And that's what I don't want any of my peers, comrades, acquaintances to do. And I believe that there are people that are struggling. And so I kind of wanted you to talk about self-love because, not that, you're not a deity, but you spend a lot of time in silence, and I think you do have learned to love yourself. And I want you to talk about how people can do that in this very fragile time. I mean, if you really think about it, you have your own meditation practice. You spend a lot of time in silence. There's a lot of musicians who don't have that kind of regimen, and their only yoga is on the bandstand, and they haven't been able to experience that for a year. So I kind of wanted you to walk us through how you've learned to love yourself.
Well, I don't know if that's going to be relevant for everybody, but I hope that it would be for most people. I think it's because you realize that if you don't take care of yourself, you're not as useful for everyone else. So it's kind of like the same thing with the songs. If I'm caught up in like, how am I going to be perceived? And instead I realize that it's not about that, but it's about how I can offer myself out to the world. So it's a similar thing. It's like, for me, like, spiritual path started because I was actually struggling with physical health and some health issues, some serious health issues I had. And like I can't do anything if I'm sick.
That's right.
Like I can't. So I had to take care of myself first. I don't know. I guess that's one kind of answer.
I mean, how because when you say take care of yourself, I mean, were you like, it's important, like, how did you do that? I mean, to me, keeping your heart open to receiving love is important too, because you can't heal yourself completely if you close off your heart And so many people, they think they can do it on their own. I think also the point you made is important, is that when you put stuff out to share with the world, music, poetry, interviews, whatever it is, there's a leap of faith there. But one thing I've realized after 2,000 interviews is that, I have inspired other people who I have deep respect for to push themselves into doing stuff that they've been putting off for a while. You don't know what the ramifications are when you put yourself out there in a vulnerable way. Chances are, if it impacts one person, if this interview impacts one person to look towards the light or to do something different, so, that's all that matters.
I'll say something else, that I think it's about realizing that there's lots of different parts of yourself, and that they're all allowed, and they are all supportive of each other. And I think a lot of us are, because that kind of makes me think of what, I don't know if you remember, but like when you first contacted me like some months ago, and I was playing Hard to Get, you're saying, I want you to come on my podcast and talk about like masculine and feminine and this and that. And I was like, who am I to talk about this kind of stuff,
Right.
But there is something that, I've been thinking about, that so many of us live with the different parts of them in war with each other. And those different parts of you, whether you think of it as masculine and feminine sides of you or whatever, if you realize that there could be actually a healthy balance of all these different things that may seem contradictory within one's being, right? That they don't, we are a walking paradox, but those different expressions and different ways of being that we all have could actually work in harmony if we kind of listen to what they're trying to tell us, or what, I don't know if I'm clearly.
I think it's beautiful. No, you're spot on. And the it's funny. I forgot about how long. I originally it's so funny because I really assumed you were more of a teacher of meditation than I didn't even know you were. Maybe I knew you were a musician, but it is all about accepting we all have the divine feminine and the divine masculine within us. It's a matter of listening to those things. That's the hard part. That's the hardest part, is being able to be guided by that kind of stuff. But, Noga, can we do set 2? I mean, we just burned through 73 minutes here, but I mean, you just breezed through that so beautifully. I mean, that was just, that was beautiful. I mean, we have a lot more to do, so maybe we can do it very soon.
Yeah, we can continue some other time.
That sounds great. I'm so honored and so humbled to connect with you, my friend, and I hope that you have that many blessings come your way in the coming months, and just continue on your path, because you are on the righteous path, and you have a lot to offer to society. So keep going forward.
Thanks so much, Jake. Many blessings to you too.
Bye, Noga.
Bye.
Bye. Nice interview on the Jake Feinberg Show. Somebody who is truly an authentic and dealing in many different healing modalities, Noga Shefi. We'll be back next week with another slew of interviews. This is the Jake Feinberg Show.